Coming up next on Connect with Chris, we're going to be talking with David DesRoches. He's our new Director of Community Programming, which means he's going to be starting the Quinnipiac podcast studio for us. Please tune in. Welcome to Connect with Chris. This is our first episode of 2020, and we're very excited to have David DesRoches with us. David is our new Director of Community Programming, which means he is starting the Quinnipiac podcast studio for us. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Happy to be here.
So give us some background first. Tell us about how you got into journalism.
Sure. So I went to school, studied media studies at College of Charleston, and wrote for the college newspaper. Really fell in love with investigative reporting, and eventually moved to Ethiopia to start a nonprofit media project where we told feature stories about people in the country. And then when I came back to the United States in 2009, I started working in a newspaper. Found my way to Connecticut, worked online, worked at public radio for 5 years, and just really fell in love with storytelling and telling people stories, and also the government accountability elements to journalism I also find very interesting. And then I found my way to the Quinnipiac podcast studio.
Excellent. So before we start talking about the podcast studio, tell me a little bit about making the switch from newspapers to radio. What was that like for you?
So, they call us print refugees, people who have suffered through the downsizing of newspapers. I mean, we joke about it, but it's also, something that is kind of sad to watch, newspapers that have been around for a very long time, doing really excellent work for decades, struggle to try to figure out how to adapt to the changing media landscape. So working in newspapers was always a struggle because you never knew what was going to happen. I think the networks that I worked for went through layoff periods. I was lucky. I got unlucky once, but I was lucky several other times. But that transition was relatively easy in terms of the journalism didn't change, but the medium definitely changed. And I realized really quickly the writing is totally different, right? Writing for radio, you're writing for your voice, you're writing how you talk. As you know, a newspaper guy, totally different. So that was definitely a challenge. Yeah. And also talking, now you're talking. Now you have to sort of act, and that was a whole different skill that I had never
have to enunciate.
Right, all that stuff. Periods on the end of your sentences. Don't ramble, which I still do. But it was an interesting transition, and but I definitely love radio, and that's when I fell in love with audio, for sure.
Okay. As you know, we play Connect 4 on this show.
I see that.
Your turn. You can
so
go
I'm
first.
up first.
You can go first. The guest always goes first.
All right, very nice. Go to the classic middle spot there.
All right. So now that you're here, you've been here about 2 months. Tell us what attracted you to this opportunity and what we're trying to do here with podcasting.
So when I saw the posting for the job, I was really sort of taken aback because it's not something I think a lot of universities are doing. Certainly universities are podcasting, that's nothing new. Yeah. But really looking at it from a programmatic angle and saying, okay, how do we not just make podcasts, but how do we sort of make a program that has somebody overseeing it that can sort of manage it, consistent quality, and professionalize it? Because it's easy to do a podcast. One thing that people love about podcasting is that the barriers to entry are pretty minimal. I mean, if you have a cell phone and an internet account, you can pretty much do a podcast. So a lot of people are doing them.
Not to interrupt.
Please.
Your turn.
It is my turn. This is true. I'm nervous. I don't know where to go here. Let's go over here. So, gonna block that too. I get it.
So you're working at the Hartford NPR station.
Working at the NPR member station.
You see this ad, and what goes through your mind?
So I just got really excited that Quinnipiac was taking this so seriously. Taking a podcasting to another level. You're not just saying let's do podcasts, but let's think about it programmatically. So I got really excited about that idea, and here I am. I think it's wonderful that the university is investing in a growing medium, a medium that's exploding in popularity. Quality is all over the place, but I think that's why it's smart when you think about it to professionalize it. How do we do that? How do we actually take podcasting to the next level? And hopefully that's what I'm here for. Is it my turn? It's your turn.
It is your turn.
It is my turn. All right.
So one of the things, Dave, that impressed us when you interviewed was that you gave us a 25-page white paper on
I'm an overachiever, Chris.
on the opportunities in podcasting and what you saw was the opportunity here. Why? Why did you do that?
Well, I felt like, well, first of all, I really wanted a position,
Yeah.
and I felt like, being able to put my thoughts together in a comprehensive way, looking at different angles, made the most sense. And I feel like there's so much opportunity for growth. There's so many different ways that we can leverage all the skills that the university already has. All the knowledge that already lives on the university, and also all the energy and curiosity of the students. I think there's so many different ways that we can do different kinds of podcasts and also reach out to the community. That was another thing that attracted me was the community aspect. So important in that white paper, I talked about how we're going to bring the area and the surrounding towns into the mix. So that was I just really wanted to show what I think is possible.
I mean, what I remember, what stuck out with me in that white paper that you did was, I mean, you even saw the potential for us to distribute these podcasts in China.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really thinking outside of the box to me.
Yeah. Well, I think markets are different everywhere you go, right? The Chinese market is huge, not just in terms of the numbers of people, but also the number of people listening to podcasts. And they love educational podcasts. And so I feel like if there are ways we can leverage the knowledge we already have to get into the Chinese market, I think it's a win-win.
Excellent. All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with David DesRoches. Welcome back to Connect with Chris. Again, we're talking with David DesRoches. He's the Director of Community Programming here at Quinnipiac, which means he is running our new Quinnipiac podcast studio. David, tell us a little bit about the operations of the podcast studio. Who's going to be doing podcasts? How are students going to be involved? All of that. And it's your turn.
It is my turn. So let's get that out of the way. So my vision is to have a studio that is very much student-driven, student-led. I really, hopefully, am able to create a podcast where students, or a program where students feel comfortable taking the lead. But also want to pull in faculty. Faculty that have interesting ideas to do podcasts. They're definitely welcome. Community members as well. But I think the key, at least for me, is sort of building the next generation of podcasters. So to the extent we get students in there, and not just hosting, there's production work that needs to take place, like doing pre-interviews, reaching out to folks, doing research. There's also audio engineering, the mixing and stuff that happens while you're recording. There's social media aspects. There's photography and videography, because we're going to have cameras in there. So there's a lot of different really cool multimedia skills that that students can learn, and hopefully we'll build upon. I'm just getting really lost in this game. I'm trying to have an intellectual conversation, but I'm just like, I just got to win at Connect 4. But yeah, it's student-led is sort of my vision. I really want students to sort of take the lead.
So you've already been working on some podcasts. Tell us about some of those.
So, is it there? Is that where I want to go? No, I'm going to go there. So we have, the first semester, we think we're going to roll out 5 podcasts. So we have one that Ben Bogardus has done.
I'm in trouble. I'm in serious trouble.
Chris is in trouble, apparently. But we're going to keep going.
I'm going to lose.
So my attention to the game paid off. I might have sounded like a schmuck out here, but at least to the game, I'm doing all right. So we have 5 podcasts that we're going to be rolling out. One is Ben Bogartis produced, I think you read for, and it's about hunger in Hamden and the surrounding area. And we have one that is a documentary style, where am I here? Oh, that's where the win is.
And it's a double win.
It's a double win. Oh, man.
You've got 2 Connect 4s.
So I got 2 Connect 4s. Does that happen on the show yet?
No, it is not.
Do I win a prize?
I have not lost.
You have not lost?
Yeah, so.
Oh, jeez. Well, can I confess? I did watch 10 minutes of Connect 4 strategy before the interview. So it's a little bit of cheating, I guess you could say. But no, so we have 5 podcasts. The Hamden one, we're doing a documentary-style podcast looking at the production of the play Rage, which was Stephen King's first novel. And it's about the things that artists have to deal with if their work is used in a way that inspires heinous acts. And so it's a really interesting, very nuanced play that I'm really excited to be a part of. So that podcast is going to be a behind-the-scenes, documentary-style podcast about that. Then we have one from the Netter School of Medicine, which is going to be I'm really excited about. And we have the Quinnipiac University poll.
What's the School of Medicine one? What's that one's going to be about?
So really excited about that one because they actually are ahead of the curve. They've already been doing a lot of research, been doing some interviews already. So they're thinking really in a lot of different ways about how they want to do it. And so they're basically interviewing experts in different fields and is geared toward medical students and faculty for continuing education purposes. But I think they also want lay people to be able to appreciate it. So,
sure.
Any sort of new research and stuff that comes out, medical related, they're going to be interviewing folks about that. So that should be really cool. And then, of course, the Quinnipiac University poll is going to have their podcast, which is going to be Doug Schwartz, we think, is going to be the head on that. He's going to host it, and it's going to be geared toward people who like polls and people who like politics. So it's going to be focused on basically the election this year and sort of public opinion around that. And then I'm going to host a I'm going to host a podcast about just what's going on in Quinnipiac. It's going to be a weekly podcast, and we're going to have all kinds of folks on and talk about interesting stuff. So yeah.
So what's been the interest on campus so far of people who wanted to do podcasts, and what kind of ideas are you hearing from people?
One of the warnings you guys gave me before I came was I was going to be inundated with requests, which I was excited about. That's it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
And it's been a strong interest, and they've been all over the place in terms of ideas, which I think is great. I mean, we have a professor who wants to do something about intersectionality of identity from immigrant folks who come to the United States. Really crazy fiction podcasts that are experimental audio storytelling. I mean, and everything in between. I'm just super excited about the ideas that are coming this way. I mean, it's just that's kind of what keeps me going, is knowing that there's so many people that want a podcast and also have really, really cool ideas that I can work on with
Very
them.
cool.
Yeah.
So somebody who is watching this show wanted to get in touch with you and had an idea or wanted to work in the podcast studio, how would they do that?
Sure, absolutely. So come by my office, I would say. We're in the Communications and Engineering building. We're right down the hall from you, Dean Roush's office. Or email me, david.desroches at qu.edu. You can just Google me if you want to know the spelling. I don't want to go through the whole spelling, but stop by, email me. You find us in the communications office, find Chris, see where I am, and talk to me. My door's open. I want to hear ideas from everybody.
All right. One final note before we wrap up. David is getting married in April.
That is true.
Tell us about the honeymoon.
The honeymoon will be in Panama, which I'm super excited about. And the honeymoon, obviously, is the exciting thing. And the wedding's in Florida. But the hard thing is that the podcast studio will just be getting up and running as I'm taking off. So I think my future wife is going to be yelling at me as I'm on my phone trying to get some stuff done. But hopefully I'll be able to turn the phone off and enjoy the Panama while we're down there.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Connect with Chris. And thank you to our guest, David DesRoches.
Thank you, Chris.